are. It's the last Sunday. Oh, what are we going to do? I did bring, I actually made notes. We're lucky. That'll somewhat provide an element of guidance for what happens next. That can be good. We are having the gift is in the giving as our focus in the month of December. And the topic for this last Sunday is fulfillment now. And that's kind of a poignant topic because we get to the new year, we talk about, are we going to have resolutions for the new year? Are they going to be fulfilled? What's going to happen? Well, what about fulfillment now? And is that some wise idea that somebody created and printed in the program? Or as spiritual beings having a human experience, is there any credible reality to fulfillment now? And if there is fulfillment now, what's up with that? Where is it? Who gets it? Or the other side of it, which actually shaped my talk, was we had a foundations class, and I've had some people show up and visit with me in my capacity as a practitioner, where we say, hey, we have practitioners. Attend a service, and at the end, a practitioner will know the spiritual truth for you. And one of the questions that's come up is, what about when one of my beloved meets a circumstance, whether it's an accidental death or a medical death, talk about hard circumstances, or they get cheated, or I see something out there that I judge is so wrong. And, there's no balance, there's no equipoise, no consequence. What is up with some of this stuff that's going on in the world? And what does Ernest Holmes say about that? And I'll speak in the way of Ernest Holmes, and people will look me in the eye, and they don't have to say much. I know they're not always satisfied. So, what are we going to do? I don't know, maybe I wimped out. I don't think so. I'm known for, sometimes, I've only been doing minister less than a decade, for using props. And I've even in the past brought the hope of the world with me. And I've asked the deep question, is the profound truth going to be found in our genes? Perhaps. So what about fulfillment now? Will we find an answer in our genes? I've actually checked before just to find out, and my conclusion was, it's not in our genes. We're going to have to figure out some other way. So where are we going to go? I don't know. This will come in later. It's got a place. That's for later. But we're going to have to look someplace else, perhaps. And as we look towards that, I want to go back, and I'll give you a bonus. It's the last Orphan Sunday of the year, a double Rumi bonus. So, here's Rumi thinking about, what am I? What's my potential outcome? Rumi. Stop acting so small. You are the universe in ecstatic motion. Well, hey, if I want fulfillment now, and I can stand as the universe in ecstatic motion, can I rock and roll and have some fulfillment now? Is there potential in that? So where would we look to find the ecstatic motion? What could this be like? After all, the answer would somewhat be the hope of the universe. So that's going to take, I think, a little journey into the world of spiritual truth. And I brought my spiritual truth investigating machine, equipment. So I thought if we were going to look for spiritual truth, we ought to be a little scientific about it. Ernest Holmes did call it science of mind, religious science. So we ought to take a little bit of method and use some tools and see what we could do. And I'm going to go back to the opening when Jesse pointed out that we are a high-tech with it CSL. We do streaming. We actually have a control booth. In fact, let's all wave to not only just the people that are watching us now and in the future, because they may have heard that something crazy happened on the Orphan Sunday. Let's just wave to the people in the control booth. Hey! I appreciate what you do because they're back there, adjusting things, making slides happen, or sometimes disappear. You've seen it. We've all watched it. And they're doing that thing, and they're there. And I would tell you that as a spiritual being, I know the truth of these members of our community, love them dearly, and I know what they do. So now let's experiment with investigating some alternatives for the folks in the control booth. For example, if I look at them this way, they've turned into giants. And is that an iceberg on Elliot's shoulder or a mote of dust? My goodness. They've become giants. So as a spiritual being, I saw the truth of them, I loved them, and I appreciated them. And I looked at them through a lens, and what did I have? A story. It's interesting. But did it change the spiritual truth of them? From my recognition and my knowing, did it really change them at all? And was it what I saw through the lens and the story I told about the iceberg running loose on Elliot's shoulder? Was there any reality in that? Was it true? Or was it what I know and hold in my heart about Elliot, about Lois, about anyone that I regard? What do you think? Or, and this particular scientific device is a challenge because, as you'll see, they're like the size of amoeba in the pond. Oh my goodness. How could they possibly be operating live streaming when they're the size of microbes? What's up with that? Did I change them when I looked at them through a lens and gave my report? Or was my spiritual assessment of knowing my friends, my dear beloved, is that where the truth is? So we've got the human thing, which is our ability to look through lenses and hear stories. We've got people out there that will come back as humans, having peeked through a lens, wow, and tell us a story. And so if we, in our humanity, we take a ride with the story, is that the spiritual truth of the world? Or are we just indulging the story? And so how do we choose to live? What's important to us? I think the important thing is it is our choice. I'm going to break the order of my plan and go a little bit off-road. After all, it's the Orphan Sunday. So what would Ernest Holmes say? If you turn into the science of mind, and he talks about phases of the subjective life, and he's got a thought about fulfillment, which I think is actually pretty deep. Every thought sets the fulfillment of its desire in motion in mind. And what does mind do? That part of our divine spiritual self. Mind sees the thing as already done. Already done, sealed and delivered. Mind sees it now. So there's the spiritual domain. Mind sees it done now. So when people say, I saw something bad go down, or I heard some story and it seemed out of balance, and how did they get away with that? Are they looking through some lens and telling a story, or are they speaking spiritual truth? And when we make the important decisions in our life, for our loved ones, for our families, for those we choose to be in community with, and for where we do business, what counts? The story, the lens, or the truth we know in our heart? My take is that we all show up here in spiritual community and enjoy what we do together. Because there's that part of us, that deep spiritual part, the divine presence in us that says, yay, baby, this is it. It's the real deal. I think that's what counts. And a lot of the rest of it, even though it will show up and gnaw at people, like it doesn't look right, or what happened here, is lenses and stories. And I would also suggest that some of the things we do, like having a meditation, before the service, or having a prayer wall once a month, is a chance to just come in and experience immersing in the spiritual truth. Because the more we allow ourselves the privilege and the opportunity to immerse in the spiritual truth, the easier it will be to know what's true and real, because our heart will tell us, we can figure it out. Versus what happens when someone shows up with a prop or a lens and tells a story. Interesting, but is it the real deal? I'll move this so we don't have anyone dancing with it later. Could be tough. So, another one that, thinking about these lenses that kind of struck me, because when I got first aware of music and music I liked, there was this Joni Mitchell. These Canadian people and Americans also like to sing, and she was singing Both Sides Now. And that's a song where if you actually look it up, the list of people that have performed it and recorded it because it's touched their hearts was huge. And I'm sure millions of people across the world have been hit and transformed in part by these lyrics. I've looked at clouds from both sides now, from up and down, and still somehow, it's clouds' illusions I recall. I really don't know clouds at all. So if someone tells a story, and maybe it's got some hook with it, and it comes from a lens that's an interesting lens, not a silly lens, but there's lenses that are interesting, they grab us. And if they've got one of those, do we really know the clouds, the illusions at all? Versus, do we have the ability to go to our inner self, to be in our divine connection with the One, and know the spiritual truth, to see it, appreciate it, increase it, embrace it, and share it. So when we see those things that look out of tune or harsh, is that part of it? And does it work? Let's do some further experimentation here on the Orphan Sunday and figure out what we can actually find out about that. Because I do think we have to go out and we have to earn it, find it, do it, practice it. I don't think it's given to any of us. There's some first-person investment that's needed. Some words of Benjamin Franklin kind of caught me in thinking about that. He was talking about the Constitution. He was one of the people that framed the country we live in. And what he said was, the U.S. Constitution does not guarantee me or you or any of us happiness. But what does it guarantee? The pursuit of happiness. Now, how do we pursue it? With lenses and stories, or from our heart and spiritual community? The choice is up to us. And I think that those who are here today are probably saying, yeah, spiritual community is part of the path to get to that happiness that we're all guaranteed to the right to pursue. Because as Benjamin Franklin further says about happiness, you have to catch up with it yourself. You have to catch up with it yourself. So let's go out in the world and chase some happiness. I don't know if this looks any good to any of you, but it's kind of cool. It's apparently for sale for $50. There's nobody here at the store today. So I'm the spiritual being having a human experience. I see that. We have magic auto tithe bucks. I think maybe there's change due back if I use one of these. Obviously, I could go to the store. I could pay. And now I've got the magical multi-metal bowl. It's a cool thing. From a spiritual point of view, does anyone have an issue with that transaction? Did I not know that in all principle and every measure I fulfilled an honest transaction when I did that? I think I did. Now, we could probably come up with a lens. I've got the tool over there, and make it seem smaller or bigger, or come up with a story about it, but is it the clouds in the story, or is it the spiritual truth of the transaction? And do we have the ability to know that? Because it could happen different ways. What would a different way be? And, watch very closely, because I'm wondering in this different way if you think the consequences were deferred or they were immediate. What I'm about to do here is my best answer to people who are saying, I saw someone do something and I think they got away with it and it sure irritates me and does not seem right. So watch very closely. So, is the reckoning deferred, or did it happen in an instant when I tried to cheat spirit in me? When I tried to cheat my spiritual being by taking what wasn't mine? Which was it? I would argue that even if it wasn't the total consequence, even if the gendarme didn't come and, put me in cuffs and charge me, that in the moment I decided to be a cheat, I cheated the person. I think I also cheated myself, because I don't think spirit in me gave me a pass on that. Any of you think spirit in me gave me a pass? Did any of you give a pass when that kind of thing happens? So it is complicated, and it does flow out in the world beyond the instant. I suppose since they're going to play the keyboard, I shouldn't leave it sitting there. That might generate some overtones. So there's my take on it. I think we're all spiritual beings, and to the extent we can have a practice and an understanding and a knowledge that our human part can touch our heart and know that truth, that we actually have the potential to be at one, not only with spirit, but with the truth of the world and the truth of all of it. And that the stuff that goes on when people show up and they've got a lens and a story, like it's interesting, it talks to the human part of us, but friends, it's a lens and a story. Don't get hooked for that. Never, I would say, never sell out your divine soul and your spiritual birthright to be hooked by some story. Stand in the truth. Stand in the truth. That's where all the good stuff is found, whether it's in family, community, relationship, or business. There. Well, I was going to try to hide their brand. I don't want to get that company tarnished with that. So I think that is how it works. And so if that notion that we do know that truth and we stand in it, and if that all resonates with you, I'd invite you to just stand up where you are in your seat for a moment and join me. And just share back, repeat with me. I stand as the divine being that I am.
I stand as the divine being that I am.
I claim my birthright in spirit.
I claim my birthright in spirit.
And then turn to someone near you, whether you know them or not, and just say, I honor you as the divine being that you are. I cherish and honor your birthright from spirit. Please, just have a seat with that. Yeah. I mean, in a world that continually finds interesting lenses and interesting stories that can take us at a vulnerable moment, or even in a moment when we're at our best, and just pull us aside, it's spirit in the heart within us That's the rock that keeps us true. I think it's what calls us to show up as spiritual community, and even when things can be tough, to find a way here. And when finding the path in spiritual community sometimes is a little difficult, that's the call that brings us forward and makes it happen. And do keep in mind that it's not just what we share here on a Sunday. Sundays are beautiful. The hope of the world, yes. And like we have classes. I mean, where else could you go to a class? And by the time the class was done, I've got the world's smallest painting with a magic jewel in the middle. And this comes from like New Foundation's class around that time. And so it's got a little message on it around the magic jewel: love wins. Where else in modern America can you choose to spend some time with a few members of your spiritual community to be steeped in meditation, prayer, and study of spiritual principle, and come away with the jewel and the reminder that love wins? I mean, we may look out there and think that the cataclysm of weather won, or we may think that war won. Okay, put down the lens. What's our heart tell us? What's the spiritual truth? My vote is that love wins. And also, I would tell you that we can go back to biblical scripture a good ways back. Romans chapter 13, verse 10. Love does no harm to a neighbor. Love does no harm to a neighbor. Therefore, love is what? Love is the fulfillment of the law. So as we are guaranteed the fulfillment of the law, it is such an honor to stand with this spiritual community and know that as we stand in our truth, we are the force, the power, and the generator of the most beautiful new year. Claim it, be ecstatic in motion, and enjoy it. And may you all be blessed in that.